Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Before Coffee. It's Good News Tuesday. Let's find out what good things are happening in the world so that we don't have to feel like everything's a total utter doomsday, because people are doom scrolling these days, especially with 15 wars happening now. So let's not talk about those and talk about fun stuff today on Before Coffee. Peatland, plastic, and phasing out coal. Here's why Wales is our green country of the month.
And final army base stripped of Confederate name as Fort Gordon becomes Fort Eisenhower.
Paid sick leave. Which countries in Europe have the most generous benefits for ill workers?
And more good Tuesday, Robert E. Lee statue in Charlottesville is melted down.
And don't forget, it's Halloween. Creepy cuts. What would you put on your ideal Halloween playlist?
Yes, that's right. It's Halloween, but it's also National Knock Knock Joke Day and National Doorbell Day. By coincidence, it's also Halloween, October 31st, 2023 on Before Coffee.
Our first news story. This is from Euronews Green. Though it may be small, Wales is one country making moves on climate action. Extreme weather, storms, and flooding continue to emphasize the unavoidable importance of climate action in Europe and beyond. The need to decarbonize our energy systems by quitting fossil fuels and committing to clean power has never been made more clear. Each country has its unique challenges and resources that influence its road to net zero, but celebrating one another's successes can help inspire and pressure our own politicians to follow suit. Though it may be small, Wales is one country making moves on climate action. The UK government recently backpedaled on a number of net zero commitments, including delaying a ban on petrol and diesel cars. Wales climate ministers teamed up with Scottish National Party net zero secretary to call a summit to keep net zero pledges on track. In a letter, they pointed out that their disappointment in the Prime Minister's announcements last month, saying that they had devolved governments of Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland hadn't been consulted. The two ministers demanded a new mutually respectful partnership and a summit of four nations chaired by the Independent Climate Change Committee to ensure net zero commitments remain on track. So what is Wales doing to keep net zero targets within reach? From coal community to owned renewable energy. Like the rest of the UK, Wales has a legally binding target to reach net zero emissions by 2050. The country's last coal-fired power station closed in 2019, but though it may have been stopped using coal for its power, mining in Wales has a complex history dating back hundreds of years. Yeah, almost like every single small town is a mining town. What are they supposed to do now? Move to London? Gross. Boissevain, the UK's largest open-cast coal mine located in Mythiotynfil. I used to know how to speak Welsh. I genuinely did. Is finally due to close in November this year. The mine's appeal to continue extracting coal was turned down by the local council on climate grounds. Local residents also took part in a long-running campaign calling for the mine to shut down, highlighting the impact it was having on their health and happiness. Some homes were less than 40 meters away from Boissevain. Police are also in place to stop new coal mines and extensions to existing ones in the future. They failed to prevent a bid to reopen an open-cast coal mine in Carmarthenshire earlier this year. Ultimately, the application was turned down due to local ecological impacts, but it sparked a call for more than 30 Welsh NGOs and businesses for the government to fully ban coal mining on Welsh soil. Wales intends to meet 100% of its electricity needs from renewables by 2035 and has some interesting methods of upping its clean energy capacity. A new publicly funded energy company, Minkimriu, was launched earlier this year. It has been created in an attempt to expand community-owned renewable energy projects across Wales. This includes handing out grants or projects to install solar panels on community buildings and businesses, as well as zero-emission community heating that could also bring bills down for residents. Climate Change Minister Julie James said that the launch puts the country on a pathway to meet its renewable energy goals. The current market-based approach to the energy system is not delivering decarbonization on the scale or pace necessary for climate emergency, and has not been retained sufficient benefit in Wales, she said earlier this year. Local use of locally generated energy is an effective way to support net zero and keep the benefit in our communities. Parts of Wales was severely flooded by Storm Bobbitt this month as the country contends with the growing impacts of climate change, but the government has committed £4.6 million, or 5.2 million euros, of funding to protect thousands of properties using nature-based solutions. Peatlands, also known as bogs, mires, and moors, can have a significant impact on climate change, but only if it's managed properly. They have the potential to be important carbon sinks. Basically, all bogs, mires, and moors are a natural filtration system. They are the natural way the earth gets toxicity out of the environment. And you need to protect them so that they can exist. If they die, you have nothing naturally filtrating everything. 90% of Wales' peatland has been damaged to the extent that it emits greenhouse gases. It does the opposite. Welsh government is offering peatland owners funding to help restore the unique ecosystem. The grants are seen as critical components of the country's effort to triple the rate of which its peatlands are being restored and help prevent against the effects of the climate crisis. Wales also cancelled several major road building projects earlier this year on environmental grounds. A groundbreaking policy reassessed more than 50 schemes against a series of tough tests on their climate impact. Dozens of major projects were halted or amended based on this review, with officials considering whether or not new roads are really the solutions to the country's transport problems. Yeah, their problems are they live in valleys and there's tons of mountains. So they're going up and down and around to get to places. The government has said it provides an opportunity to instead invest in public transport, cycling, and walking schemes. A number of single-use plastic items, including plates, cutlery, and polystyrene takeaway containers, have also been banned in Wales, following similar rules in Scotland and England. The country's climate minister, Julie James, says the ban has been built on the work of many communities that have already gone plastic-free. It is the first step in phasing out unnecessary single-use plastics that will save plastic carrier bags and controversial oxo-degradable plastics, which break down into microplastics rather than truly biodegrade, banned in the future. So, what is Euronews' Green Country of the Month? Each month, we highlight a European country that is advocating for climate, nature, and the environment. Our Green Country of the Month can stand out for anything from eco-innovations to policy change. The previous winners were Albania, Denmark, Iceland, Austria, Portugal, Spain, and Estonia. So, there you go. Wales is the November Green Country of the Month for Euronews. And everyone should be more like Wales. Your story.
All right, more good news. And a good news on the getting rid of the icons of Confederacy news. Final Army base stripped of Confederate name becomes Fort Gordon. Becomes Fort Eisenhower. Was Fort Gordon. This is from Stars and Stripes, Corey Dickstein. The names of Confederate leaders who took up arms against the United States in the Civil War have been fully stripped from Army installations, as the former Fort Gordon in Georgia was renamed Fort Eisenhower on Friday. The post, which carried namesake Confederate John Brown Gordon since its inception as Camp Gordon in 1941, now carries the name of one of the Army's most historic and revered figures. Former President Dwight D. Eisenhower, a five-star Army general who commanded all Allied forces in defeating Nazi Germany in World War II. The ceremony marking the name change was held at the Post-Parade Grounds, a location where Eisenhower, as president, conducted his final review of troops. As commander-in-chief in January 1961, in the waning days of his second presidential term, officials at the Post noted Friday. We're transitioning from arguably a failed leader as a namesake to the visionary world leader who resonated with all of the soldiers that he led on a world stage. said Major General Paul Stanton, the commander of Fort Eisenhower, and its Army's Cyber Center of Excellence, which trains the service cyber and signal forces. He was recognized and admired. There's no doubt the soldiers under his command knew they were being led by a man of character, and he inspired them to do their life's best work on a daily basis, whether that be in combat, whether that be in training, whether that be later in life as a statesman. So he's absolutely the right namesake. The renaming ceremony was the 9th and final among the Army's installations this year, capping a controversial 3-year effort initiated by top Pentagon officials in 2020 amid nationwide racial reckoning following the Memorial Day killing of George Floyd by Minneapolis police. Congress mandated the naming commission of a 2020 annual Pentagon policy bill, charging the panel with identifying all items in Defense Department inventory associated with the Confederacy. Among the items in the commission was the study were the names of 9 Army bases honoring Confederate generals, including Fort Gordon. Then President Trump vetoed the bill, disapproving of the effort to remove Confederate names, but lawmakers were able to override the veto. During recent months, Fort Pickett, Virginia became Fort Barfoot, Fort Lee, Virginia became Fort Gregg Adams, Fort A.P. Hill, Virginia became Fort Walker, Fort Hood, Texas became Fort Cavazos, Fort Rucker, Alabama became Fort Novosel, Fort Polk, Louisiana became Fort Johnson, Fort Bragg, North Carolina became Fort Liberty, and Fort Benning, Georgia became Fort Moore. Retired Admiral Michelle Howard, who was the chairwoman for the naming commission, said Friday's ceremony was the cherry on top of the massive multi-million-dollar effort. In addition to the Army bases, U.S. defense officials have spent 2023 removing hundreds of other Confederate-linked items, renaming buildings, roads, and 2 Navy ships. Howard, who is a Navy trailblazer, is the service's first female 4-star admiral and first black female commander of a naval battle group, said the commission's found initial objections in the Augusta community to ridding the post of its namesake, a slave owner who challenged the Reconstruction effort as Georgia's U.S. Senator and governor after the U.S. Civil War. But she said the community rallied around the choice of Eisenhower, a name proposed by local Augustans because of his ties to the community. Eisenhower, Army officials said, often vacationed in Augusta, Georgia during his presidency, and especially enjoyed playing the city's world-famous Augusta National Golf Course. There are some angry voices when we started the process. You know, this is part of the heritage of the communities, Howard said. Working with the community, I think we got to the names that fit well with each communities. So this is a wonderful day in this community, which has just rallied around the name. Throughout Augusta, several businesses already sported the Fort Eisenhower name, and road signs had already been changed to reflect installation's new moniker. But the naming commission's efforts remain controversial in some circles. Multiple Republican candidates for president have vowed to undo the name changes. Oh, okay, who's that gonna please? The racists? Oh yeah, please the racists.
Stop whistling, man.
You got that, man. Yeah, you've already got the racists. You don't need to freaking rally around your stupid lost cause. Howard said such a move would be a step backward and illegal under current law. The 2020 law that created the commission outlaws naming any future Defense Department property for anyone who served the Confederacy voluntarily. If an elected leader thinks that we should go back down this path, I would hope they would first talk to their constituents first. It was pretty clear to me that we got into the names and the communities rallied around those names. So if you were going to go backward, you should talk to constituents first and see how they feel about it. In its October 1, 2022 report to Congress on naming the Army bases, the Naming Commission wrote the group had recommended Eisenhower replace Fort Gordon not only for his storied efforts to top Allied commander forces in Europe in World War II, for his extensive, innovative, and effective military experience and leadership which shaped our modern world. His career demonstrated superlative devotion to duty, executing those duties with iron history and personal experience adapted to new circumstances, Commission wrote. He continues to be an example and inspiration in present and future soldiers of the Army, so faithfully served and decisively led. And not only did Eisenhower's top general Stanton Ford Eisenhower's top generals said those innovative efforts included early computer-based efforts that would shape the Army's early efforts into cyberspace, which is a post-primary mission. Eisenhower established NASA as a president, ordered America's first satellite launch into space, and established Advanced Research Projects Agency, which helped develop the early internet. President Eisenhower promoted the rapid development of science. Technology was used at Fort Eisenhower today. Where would our Fort Eisenhower mission be without his vision? We wouldn't be postured to fight and win in cyber operations. Eisenhower's granddaughter, Susan Eisenhower, said her grandfather would have been honored with the selection, and especially because of the time he spent with his wife, he spent in Augusta. How he loved this community, Susan Eisenhower told the crowd at the Post. If Dwight Eisenhower were here today, he'd be full of heartfelt appreciation for the focus and dedication this community has placed on serving our country and keeping us safe. And of course, Eisenhower warned us about the military-industrial complex in his last speech as president. Your story.
You guys better watch out, man. You're going to be in war forever. Oh, no. He was right.
We should have listened to Ike.
Why do we listen to him?
I don't know. He's a smart man. Your story.
Okay. In, I guess, corporate news. What place can you live in Europe where they'll give you the most generous benefits? This is from Camille Bello on Euronews Next. More workers are taking sick days in the UK than at any point during the last decade. How does the situation compare with the other European countries? Works in the United Kingdom are taking more sick works. He said works. The works, the works. Workers in the United Kingdom are taking more sick days now than any point during the last decade, new data shows. Employees were taking 7.8 days of leave in the last year, up to 5.8 days pre-pandemic, according to the UK's Chartered Institute for Personnel and Development, CIPD. The study analyzed data from more than 900 organizations representing 6.5 million employees in the UK. One of the key findings was the number of sick days taken reportedly due to worry caused by stress, the cost of living crisis, and ongoing anxiety over COVID-19. While the virus is noticed as still causing a significant number of absences, mental health was also one of the key drivers of staff taking time off. So, does the picture fit with what's happening in the rest of Europe? How do paid leave allowances compare across Europe? And do more people call in sick when there are generous schemes in place? Firstly, it is interesting to look at how much governments spend on sickness and health benefits overall. Germany ranks first in the EU, attributing 11% of its GDP to sick leave and public medical care. It's followed by France and the Netherlands, both at 10.2%, according to the EU Statistical Office Eurostat. The EU countries that allocate the least sickness and health benefits are Estonia at 4.9%, Lithuania at 5%, Poland and Hungary and Ireland at 5.5%. Ireland, no! That you have so many good things going for you, but this isn't one of them. And that's why they live in the Netherlands, for that 10.2%. It's not just about benefits and working, but also that means the culture approves of it too, right? Because the corporations are doing it. So it's all about the cultural mindset, okay? If you're allowed to take 10% of whatever your GDP in sick leave politically, then culturally they also accept that as a reasonable reason to...
Sick leave.
Yeah. According to 2020...
I haven't had that.
Sorry?
I haven't had sick leave in 20 years.
Yeah.
I've been fully employed the whole time.
Unfortunately, the rest of the world isn't on this list, but I'm sure they would ill and compare. According to 2020 figures, Germany is also the country that spends the most on sick leave benefits specifically. The country allocates 2.3% of its GDP to support sick employees. It's followed by the Netherlands, who dedicates 2.1%, Sweden 1.7%, Spain 1.5%, and Luxembourg 1.4%. Yeah, famously in Germany, you can just be sick forever. They're legally not allowed to fire you if you become bedridden and become sick. They can't fire you. So, without getting sued, I think. The 2020 rankings have made influenced by may have been influenced by the coronavirus pandemic, but if we look at the 218 figures, the countries with the highest expenditure are almost the same, except for Spain, who didn't spend as much as a few years back. Yeah, now they're at 1.5. Sick leave benefits expenditure as of 2020. Germany, Netherlands, Sweden, Spain, and Luxembourg are your top 5, and then it just goes down, down, down. And if you look at 2018, the only thing that changes is that Luxembourg and Slovenia are in the top 5 instead of Spain. Spain's down there at like 8 or 7. Graphs that you can't see, but I can see the graphs. You might assume that the countries spending more on sick leave would be the ones where people take more time off work. But reality is counterintuitive. At the end of 2022, the countries with the biggest share of employee-based absence from work were France at 14.9, Finland at 14.8, Sweden at 14.7, Denmark at 13.6, Estonia at 13.2, and the Netherlands at 12.4. The nations where people are the least absent from work are Romania, Bulgaria, Greece, and Poland, and Serbia. It's worth noting that the EU's average rate of absences from work is significantly higher for women than for men, women at 12.1, men at 7.8. A study in 2018 by the Norwegian Institute of Public Health academics identified work and family stressors as the most significant explanations for this gender gap. Yeah, you're a woman, you go deal with the kids. I'm gonna stay at work.
Sorry.
Finland, France, Sweden, Denmark, and the Netherlands have the most men between the ages of 20 and 64 leaving work or being absent for work, whereas Czechia, Sweden, Slovakia, France, Estonia, and Finland are the ones with the most amount of women who are absent from work. So those guys are kind of above the average. The countries reporting the most absent work do not match the ones spending the most on sickness and health benefits. However, they are amongst the ones who are paid leave conditions are the most generous, either in amount or duration. The following list of countries has been curated by Euronews Next and should be interpreted with caution. There are many rules and conditions surrounding I can't say the word. Being allowed for paid leave. For example, in some countries, it's only an option for those who have made sufficient contributions to their social security organizations in a reference period preceding the incapacity for work. Yeah, so you can't just get a job one week and then say, I'm sick. I'm gonna go on paid work leave, paid sick leave for 6 months. Some countries also have conditional exceptions that allow an increase in the amount given as aid. For example, if a person has contagious infection like tuberculosis or HIV. So here's the list. Luxembourg. Amount of benefit. Companies in Luxembourg are required to pay workers on sick leave their full salary for around 3 months. To be precise, for 77 days or until the end of the calendar month during which the 77th day of the work occurs. The duration of the benefit. If the work incapacity lasts beyond the period, the health insurance body grants an extension up to 78 weeks or 1.5 years. So, wow. If you get really sick, you can be covered almost to 1.5 years, but your health insurance has to approve it, so good luck with that. Estonia. Amount of benefit. 70% of the referenced wage from the Public Health Insurance Fund from the second day of sick leave. The reference wage is determined based on the average wage of the last 6 months and on social tax payments made during the previous calendar year. Up to 182 consecutive calendar days of paid sick leave, with a maximum of 240 days per year. Finland. Workers can claim a sickness allowance 9 working days after their illness begins. So if they're sick longer than 9 days, they are allowed to get paid. The employer generally pays the employee's wages during their waiting period. Oh, okay, so they still get paid during the waiting period. And many also pay the full salary during the first 1 or 2 months. Then Kela, the social insurance institution of Finland, picks up the allowance based on the worker's average annual income. Up to 300 working days, about a year. Sweden, approximately 80% of salary, but it can be higher if there's a collective agreement. So, get in those unions, baby. The duration is 364 days, but an extension is possible with paid leave then amounting to 75% of the worker's income. However, if this person in question is seriously ill, they can continue claiming sickness benefits equivalent to 80% of their salary beyond this limit. France. Depending on the type of illnesses and professional status, the benefits may differ, but the daily allowances are typically 50% of the worker's reference wages. The gross reference wage, however, is capped at 2,000 euros per month, or over 2,885.61. Very specific number. Almost 3,000 per month, meaning the daily allowance paid cannot exceed 47 euros per day. But when the sick leave exceeds 3 months, this daily allowance may be reassessed and increased. If the worker's health condition warrants it, sick leave can last up to 3 years. Portugal. The longer the sick leave, the better it's paid. While sick leave is under a month, are covered at 50%. Huh?
You doing every country?
No, actually, no. There's not every country here. They didn't even talk about the Netherlands. They're just saying these are what they find are the best countries to get sick in. This is what they've decided. I can give you just the list, which is Luxembourg, Estonia, Finland, Sweden, France, Portugal, Latvia, Lithuania, Germany, and the UK. The Netherlands is not even considered as a good country to be sick in. I don't know why. They didn't explain why they chose not other countries, but they did. They're only explaining these guys are the best. But Germany isn't even number one. Despite leading in the ranking, they decided that Germany is not among the most generous when it actually comes to the allowance compared to other EU countries. They only give you full salary for 6 weeks, and past that period, you have to talk to your health insurance company, and they give you 70% of your regular salary. It only lasts 78 weeks, up to 1.5 years, and over a period of 3 years for the same illness.
Is that?
Sorry?
I get something called short-term disability. But I got to pay for it, you know. So there's no real sick leave in the United States anymore. It's all the companies converted it to paid time off.
Yeah, they don't really mention anything about like bonuses like that, except for if you happen to have a union, you can get more money because your union agreed. Hey, if we get sick, we need to be paid more because we have a union. We are in a position where we have that leverage. The last in place is UK, where you're entitled to only £109 or 123 euros for the 4th day per week after the 4th day of being sick, and it's only up to 28 weeks. So the maximum duration of how long you can be sick is from 3 months to 36 months, with France and Portugal being basically the place you can be sick the longest, and everywhere else you can't be sick as long. There's so many countries. We'll end the article with European countries offer some of the most generous sick leave packages in the world, and even the countries with the lowest GDP per capita in the EU, such as Bulgaria, Slovakia, and Greece, offer a better social protection benefits than some of the world's wealthiest countries, such as the United States, where no federal law provides a right to paid family or medical leave. So there's some places that suck, and they're still better than the US, which makes you basically suck it up if you get sick. So sucks to be and people ask me why I moved out of the US. Anyways,
depends on your job.
Yeah, for sure.
Depends on your job.
Sure.
Get a skill.
This is all, of course, generalizations. We're obviously generalizing how it feels to be in each country, but still.
Here's the
on to your story.
Object of any job is to have a skill that somebody needs. That's your object of having a job, not just to be, oh no, my employer's abusing me. If you have a skill, they won't abuse you, believe it or not. All right. Sorry, go ahead.
You're good. It's your story.
They'll definitely try to abuse you, but it always helps to have something that's in demand other than just I show up for work. All right. Here's some good news. I don't know if that qualified as good news. Does it qualify as good news? More good news on the melting down traders front. This is from The Guardian. Nora News. That's her actual name. Nora News. Neus. Good thing she became a reporter. At a foundry last weekend with fire blazing and anti-racist activists watching, the statue of the Confederate General Robert E. Lee that sparked the deadly 2017 Charlottesville white nationalist riot was cut into pieces and melted down to liquid brass. It felt like an execution, said Jaylene Schmidt, co-founder of Charlottesville Black Lives Matter and a professor at the University of Virginia. Along with other activists, Schmidt traveled from Charlottesville to watch the melting at the foundry, which organizers will only identify as being somewhere in the South, out of concerns for the physical safety of the foundry workers. What does that tell you about the people that are afraid of these that want these statues up? What does that tell you? They're violent assholes. That's what it tells you. The melting was the accumulation of years-long effort to remove the Confederate statue from downtown Charlottesville. The issue became a flashpoint in 2016 and sparked a deadly white nationalist riot later that year. A year later, in 2017, which resulted in the death of counter-protester Heather Heyer and 2 police officers whose helicopter crashed. After a series of lawsuits, the statue was finally removed in 21 to much fanfare. It had been sitting in a warehouse in an undisclosed location until even more lawsuits made their way through the justice system. Then on 26 September this year, the final lawsuit ended. The statue could be melted down. The melting project, formerly known as Sword and the Plowshares, was organized by the Charlottesville nonprofit organization Jefferson School African American Heritage Center. The organization's proposal for what to do with the Confederate statue unanimously won Charlottesville's City Council approval in 2021. For many in the crowd at the foundry on the day of the melting, the fight over the Lee statue was personal. I thought of everything that had happened on the last 6.5 years, said Lisa Drain, interim project director for Swords and the Plowshares. On August 11th and 12th, 2017, with my 2 daughters, and I stood up to torch-bearing neo-Nazis and white nationalists with guns in our streets. My family was traumatized when my younger daughter was badly injured in a terrorist car attack that killed Heather Heyer and injured dozens that day. Our lives would never be the same. The fight to remove Confederate statues from our park became personal. Among those activists watching was Reverend Isaac Collins, the pastor of Charlottesville, during the summer of 2017. To be present it's hard to put into words, Collins said. We were part of the 100-year history of resistance to the statue, but also the 400-year legacy of race in the United States. So it was very gratifying, it was very sobering, very humbling. Me and the group watched as the foundry workers placed pieces of the statue in a furnace one by one. Among them was Lee's head. The process took hours. We were outside and night had fallen. The statue's face, mask light, began to glow. At one moment, balanced on the fiery furnace, it looked like Lee's bronze face was crying. I know it was. Once the statue was melted down, the foundry workers poured the molten metal, which looked like lava, in Schmidt's words, into oblong blocks of brass formed from molds. When we saw it removed from the ingots, there were these different variations in the color, but the sculptors told me that it was because of the impurities in the bronze. It seemed very fitting, the impure nature of what those statues have always stood for, sort of living in the material that they were created out of. Many other localities, including Richmond, Virginia, which memorably removed its Robert E. Lee statue in 2021, have been unable to find appropriate museums to house the statues, and instead are left storing the pieces in an informal statue graveyard. Melting a Confederate statue is unprecedented. It's something that hasn't been tried before, just melting down these Confederate statues, Schmidt said. And I know it's controversial, I don't take lightly doing this. Next, Swords and the Plowshares will solicit artist proposal for public art installation. I made of the brass from the Lee statue. The aim is to install a new public art piece before the 10th anniversary of the Summer of Hate on 12 August 2027. So, more good news on Good News Day. And back to you.
It's always good to melt down your useless statues to freaking maniacs. Well, I don't know if he was a maniac, but I've decided he's a maniac.
Turn them into brass commodes.
Yeah. Okay.
Your story.
Halloween time! That's right, today's Halloween, even though probably nobody is celebrating today because it is a Tuesday, and everyone's already had their Halloween parties on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, probably the previous weeks. But either way, if you're still feeling up for the actual holiday mood, the Halloween mood on Halloween, what tracks does Dave Morquand, our friend here from Your News Culture, think you should be playing on your playlist? As we know, his opinions are not our opinions, and sometimes he's completely off what we would even think, but we're gonna read his list anyways. Every Halloween evening, an appropriately spooky soundtrack. Halloween's here, and while you're prepping to fake fangs and capes, as well as stocking up on booze for your Halloween party, you might have forgotten to queue up a spooky playlist. Fear not, we here at Your News Culture have got you covered. Here are the tunes that no Halloween playlist should be without. Whether you're hosting a dinner party, getting ready for a movie marathon, a massive bash with friends, or just feel like indulging in some hauntingly good songs, here goes. First track, Mark Snow, Materia Primoris, the X-Files theme. I don't know anybody who listens to the X-Files theme as like a mood track, but that's what he's saying. How to best kick to start the playlist with one of the creepiest TV theme songs out there. That's how. Even those who've never seen the hit 90s TV show will get goosebumps and pity. They'll get pity and evicted from the party because they've squandered the opportunity to bask in the terrifying glory of Mulder and Scully's paranormal investigations. Some people might have not been alive when X-Files was out. This guy is... David Morquand is such like a... I can't explain to you how he's kind of a hipster, I guess. Like, you don't know about X-Files? You call yourself a fan of Halloween? Next, we've got Dusty Springfield's...
I never watched it. So.
I know what it is, but I've never watched it either. Dusty Springfield's Spooky. We get more mellow with Dusty and her dulcet tones. It may all be about love, but it sets a nice smooth pace to ease yourself and your guest into the spooky spirit. The Specials, Ghost Town. This absolute tune is technically about unemployment and urban decay, but there's something to be said about the 1981 single Creepy Credentials. I think being unemployed in urban decay is pretty spooky. I agree. That's more scary than a monster in your bed. It was released at the peak of the UK's recession riots, and there's nothing quite as scary as an economic decline. Especially when you're in one. And the sound of the synth is so childlike. Bobby Boris Pickett and the Crypt Kickers, Monster Mash. The classic 1962 hit Monster Mash. Now we kick things off in earnest, one of the staples of any Halloween playlist, the Monster Mash. Forget all those who will doubtless put on a Rocky Horror song like Time Warp on their playlist. This is the one you can't do without. It was a graveyard smash. You know the song, that's a lyric in the song. Billie Eilish, Bury Your Friend. Now that song is really creepy. This is not from 1962, but 2019. We continue with a single off of Eilish's debut album, When We Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? It's a dark pop at its best, and it segues nicely in some of the most catchy tunes where things get really bone-chilling. Rihanna's Disturbia. Rihanna's 2008 hit single is a banger with some eerie atmospheric screaming and lyrics about it creeping up inside you, consuming you. We're betting she's referencing to Pazuzu, but maybe that's just wishful thinking. Yeah, the yeahs, heads will roll. How on earth Karen O and her motley crew managed to make a dance song about decapitation, we'll never know. What we do know is that it's an absolute tune and very danceable. If you want to enjoy this ode to guillotine to its fullest, choose the 8-track remix, which almost tops the original recording. All together now. Off with your head. Dance till you're dead. Screaming Jay Hawkins, I put a spell on you. Pity the fool who doesn't appreciate a good bit of Jay. His song has been covered countless times, but Hawkins delivers the definitive version. Nick Cave and Bad Seeds, Red Right Hand. One of Cave's most creepy cuts, this sinister slow burner about bloody vengeance was inspired by John Milton's Paradise Lost, and the title refers to the vengeful hand of God. It's been used in countless films and TV shows, most notably the Scream movies, The X-Files, and of course, Peaky Blinders. An A must for a spooky set. David Bowie's The Heart's Filthy Lesson. Yes, scary monsters and the super creeps could also be appropriate, but this industrial rock effort from the much-missed musical Chameleon is geniusly creepy. It's heavily influenced by the music of Nine Inch Nails. Yeah, you said industrial rock, so I already knew. And featured on the soundtrack for David Fincher's Seven. The video is also worth checking out. Grimy and sinister stuff. What more do you need? Speaking of Nine Inch Nails, The Becoming by Nine Inch Nails. There are human screams on this one, where the backup vocals should be. Sounds about right. Mike Oldfield, The Tubular Bells, Part 1. Unavoidable, should you truly wish the power of Christ to compel you. We now come to the cinematic section of the playlist, kicked off in style by the de facto theme song of the greatest horror film ever made. When listening to the song Divorced from the Exorcist, which is hard enough to do, it's a beautiful song, but it doesn't necessarily invoke dread or the rotating head of a possessed child. However, thanks to the late William Friedkin, it is forever enshrined as one of the most chilling orchestral pieces out there. John Carpenter, Halloween theme. From one classic to another, the original soundtrack to the gold standard of the slasher film is still the best, but the epic orchestral retooling for the god-awful 2021 Halloween Kills is spectacular, and features plenty of cellos, which are great. Lunis featuring Michael Marshall, I got 5 on it. We're keeping it cinematic with this track from Jordan Peele's Us. This remix of Lunet's hit song from the 1995 is truly blood-curdling, with cellos, them again, and a go-go discordant strings and some ominous crescendos. It's become a scary playlist must-have since the film's release in 2019. Ghostbusters, of course, by Ray Parker Jr. After the last one, things need to be lined up a bit. Only a bit, mind you, and not for very long. This 1984 classic will get the party started again. Now that they've been quaking in their boots, did you know that Hugh Lewis reportedly sued Parker Jr. over the song's similarity to his I Want a New Drug? It's debatable, and probably out of spite for some good Ghostbuster, as Ghostbuster remains to this day. Talking Heads, Psycho Killer. We're heading out in the classic session of the playlist classic, with an early Talking Heads classic. The aptly titled Psycho Killer shines due its out-of-the-rhythm feel, as if it was directly beamed from the minds of a murderer with a penchant for melodic and affinity for the French language. The Cramps, Goo Goo Muck. This 1981 single from The Cramps originally gave off some surfer vibes, but Goo Goo Muck ended up as a Halloween classic. It has enjoyed something of a resurgence as the backtrack to Jenna Ortega's iconic dance on Wednesday's Addams Netflix series. Wednesday, and no Halloween playlist would be complete without it. Alice Cooper, Feed My Frankenstein. We could have had Welcome to My Nightmare from the shock rock pioneer, but this horror rock masterpiece is something to treasure. Feed My Frankenstein was also featured in Wayne's World, and the creepily seductive lyrics about running greasy fingers up greasy spines is just what the undead doctor ordered. Blue Oyster Cult, Don't Fear the Reaper, Baby Take My Hand. Okay, this rock classic from 1976 has been a staple of horror culture since it was released and featured films like Halloween and Scream. It's a surprisingly deep track about the inevitability of death, as well as wondering if Romeo and Juliet were actually spending eternity together. And there's a damn cowbell in it. Don't forget, more cowbell. Every song needs a cowbell. The Ramones, Pet Cemetery. Keep the classics coming with the punk pioneers The Ramones and their ode to Stephen King's resurrecting Graveyard. Micah Levy, Lipstick to Void. Throw everyone off with a deliciously eerie cut from Jonathan Glazer's Under the Skin soundtrack, composed by the great Micah Levy, and also provided the oppressive musical backdrop for Glazer's most recent film, The Zone of Interest. It's the stuff of nightmares, and so damn beautiful, feeling like it just arrived from another dimension where Lovecraftian monsters reign supreme. It'll kill the party mood, but your guests will just have to get with the program. The Smashing Pumpkins, We Only Come Out at Night. We finish off with the Pumpkins' underplayed Ode to Vampirism. It's a chill trek off their 1995 opus, Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, and the ideal way to cap off your playlist.
No.
And if you've won your guest over by now, they'll be only happy to join you in chanting a few lines. All together now, we only come out at night. The days are much too bright. We only come out at night. Did we miss anything? Let us know, and let freaking David know that he sucks if you disagree with his playlist. Okay, what did we miss? Tell me what you would put on your playlist.
Oh, I don't know. No Warren Zevon. Warren Zevon had a lot of songs.
Yeah.
Rolling the Headless Thompson Gunner, for one.
Yeah.
Werewolves of London, of course. Excitable Boy, right? Excitable Boy. Of course, he kills his girlfriend and then digs her up later after he gets out of prison. You know,
yeah.
Classic American love story.
I would put some black metal in there, but black metal is not a very party-friendly music.
There's lots of Warren. Yeah, lots of Warren Zevon horror stories that end up in singable little songs. I was like, how do you leave out Warren Zevon? Anyway, that's just me finding fault early on a Tuesday.
No, I guess I've already said that we disagree with this guy all the time. So
what?
I've already said that we disagree with him all the time.
Well, oh, okay. Well, it can't be all inclusive, and it is an opinion piece.
Yep. Okay, your day in history.
This day in history?
Yep.
1632, Dutch painter Johannes Vermeer, whose paintings are among the most beloved and revered images in the history of art, was baptized. In 1860, on this day, Juliette Gordon Low, founder of the Girl Scouts of the United States of America, was born in Savannah, Georgia. On this day in 1864, Nevada became the 36th state of the United States. In this day in 1877, soldier and statesman Chiang Kai-shek, head of the nationalist government of China from 1928 to 1945, and subsequently head of the Chinese nationalist government in exile in Taiwan, was born. That's a mouthful. 1922, Benito Mussolini became the Prime Minister of Italy. He was the first of Europe's fascist dictators in the 20th century. 1926, Harry Houdini, the magician and escape artist, died of peritonitis stemming from a stomach injury. When Houdini famously would dare people to punch him in the stomach. Like, hit me as hard as you can, hit me as hard as you can. One guy took him up on it, but Houdini wasn't ready for the punch. He punched him in the stomach and basically killed him. 1941, 15 years of work, the Mount Rushmore National Memorial in Black Hills of South Dakota was completed. Well, the memorial was completed, but the sculpture was never completed. The colossal sculptures featured the heads of Washington, Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln. In 1962, the American psychological thriller Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, the late career triumph for both Bette Davis and Joan Crawford, was released in American theaters. 1968, U.S. President Lyndon B. Johnson ordered the end of the American bombing in North Vietnam, which Nixon started as soon as he got to be president again. 2008, American author and oral historian Studs Terkel, who chronicled the lives of Americans in the Great Depression to the earliest 21st century, died in Chicago. Studs Terkel, if you want to get a chance, go find the Studs Terkel archive on the internet. He has a lot of great interviews. There are a lot of great interviews of famous people you would never expect it. They just happened to be passing through Chicago at the time. In 2020, Scottish-born actor Sean Connery, who perhaps is best known for portraying super spy James Bond in a series of films, died at the age of 90. Also died the same week as Alex Trebek, famously, the game show host. Although Halloween, today's featured event is Luther's 95 Theses posted. According to this tradition, Martin Luther on this day, 1517, posted at a church door in Wittenberg, Germany, his 95 Theses a manifesto that turned into a protest about the indulgence scandal into the Protestant Reformation. Featured birthdays, November 19th. Featured biography, was Indira Gandhi, Prime Minister of India, who was died on October 31st, 1984, age 66, was famously assassinated. Born on November 19th, 1970. Birthdays today. Peter Jackson was born in 1961, New Zealand director. Michael Landon, American actor, director, and producer, was born in 1936. Dan Rather, American newscaster, was born in 1931. Jimmy Savile, British entertainer, was born in 1926. And then we already covered Chiang Kai-shek. And did you know, though, although Halloween celebrated this day is now observed largely as a secular holiday, it is also the eve of All Saints Day, also a religious holiday among some Christians. So All Saints Day is tomorrow. And what day is it today besides Halloween? National Caramel Apple Day. That's kind of fitting. It's National Knock Knock Joke. You know any good knock knock jokes? Or any bad ones? Let them out today. National Magic Day and National Girl Scout Founders Day. We also covered National Doorbell Day and Reformation Day, which of course is related to Martin Luther. Back to you.
Nothing to be back to because what
there.
Is it? It is the end of our show. I don't know why this keeps on disconnecting. Turn this off. Reset this. Transition. Thank you.
Knock knock.
This has been knock knock. This has been Allison from the Netherlands. Knock knock. Who's there? Banana? Banana who? Orange. I don't know.
Aren't you glad I didn't say banana?
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one. We will see you tomorrow for weird and wacky news on Wednesday here on Before Coffee.
And it's Roger United States saying greetings and salutations for another morning on October 31st, 2023 edition of Before Coffee.
Be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and notify buttons, and follow our other channels, Toxic Alley, History of Gravy, and Scratchy Old Records.